Hi, and welcome to Always Bring a Book. I'm Craig. On today's episode, I chat with TJ Klune. I actually had the chance to interview TJ a few years ago, so I was really excited to get to reconnect, especially since so much has happened in those few years. He's had new releases, re-releases of older work, and more books on the way. So TJ's been super busy, so I was really excited that we were able to find some time to talk. We dig into his work, the publishing industry, AI in the book world, and what it's like to publish new books after a massive success like The House in the Cerulean Sea. I hope you enjoy the episode. Today's guest is TJ Klune, the best-selling author of The House in the Cerulean Sea, Under the Whispering Door, In the Lives of Puppets, and many more. TJ, it's so good to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being back here.
It's funny. I had written like an opening question that I was going to ask you, and then I looked at your Instagram and saw that like 2 days ago you announced the cover of a new book and it's on a new imprint and all this exciting news. So kind of threw me for a loop. So my first question is, can you tell us about The Stars Look Like Home?
Yeah, absolutely. The Stars Look Like Home is a novel that just got announced with Tor. They're doing a new imprint called Wildthorn. And Wildthorn is slightly different than Tor. Tor has previously launched Tor Nightfire, which is their horror. Then they did Bramble, which is their romance. And now Wildthorn is for speculative fiction that doesn't necessarily fall into the fantasy category. There's not going to be necessarily like swords and shields and big dragons or anything like that. So case in point, The Stars Look Like Home is probably the most self-indulgent thing I've ever written because it's from the point of view of a dog. And it is essentially my dog because I wanted to put my dog into a book. So it's not a one-to-one analog, but if you look at the cover, you'll notice that the dog, his name is Burke, his left ear is bent. That's my dog. His left ear, he has big, huge ears, but his left ear is always a little flopped over. And I just wanted to include that. And as a matter of fact, the cover is based off a photo I took off of my dog and then Chris just went in, the cover artist, Chris Sickles, went in and built the set around it and everything like that. But the book itself is from the point of view of a dog who, when he's born, misunderstands something that his mother tells him, making him believe that he, like all dogs, is immortal. And as he grows up, he realizes that's not the case. And the fact that dogs live very much shorter lives than their human counterparts. So that sends him into a spiral of mortality and a spiral of what his place in the world is. And so he sets off on an adventure to find out what he can do for his human to make sure that his human is happy before he departs. Even though he's very young and he will live for a very long time, he's still a drama queen and believes that the end of his life is going to happen at any moment. So he needs to make his human happy before he goes. The reason that I love this book so much is A, again, because it's self-indulgent and I got to write about my dog, but B, the very first line of this book, and it's a promise that I will keep for as long as this book exists. The first line of this book is a promise. The dog does not die in this. It will not happen. I would never do that. I don't know if people are aware. There's a website called doesthedogdie.com.
I've actually seen this before.
Yes, yeah. It is at one of my favorite websites. And anytime a dog is featured in any sort of media, I will go to this website to look up and see if the dog lives or not. And if it does not, then there's a chances are I won't consume that media. Have you seen the movie I Am Legend with Will Smith?
Yeah.
The old 2000s old. It's 2007, something like that. There's a very specific scene in that movie where his dog does not make it. And I remember being in the theater going, no. This is not how these things happen. And so I would never do that to an animal in my book. So even though it's a me book and even though it is coming from me, I still have to make that promise. I will make you cry, yes, but I'm not going to do it at the expense of a dog's life.
Yeah. When you were explaining it, I was like, I'm so glad that promise is in there because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to read this. Like
even if you look at God, I can't remember. What was that movie called from some years ago? It had like Jennifer Aniston in it. And it was like A Dog's Purpose or something like that. And it was basically the whole movie was, we love this dog. And then the movie is like, and then at the end of the movie, the dog dies and everybody's like, oh no, we're sad, but the dog taught us so much. I'm like, no, I don't want to see that part. I don't care about that part. Let me see the part where there's 10 to 15 years of the dog being happy and living their best life. So that's what I wanted to do.
I love that. And speaking of sad dog things, when I was preparing for this, I saw that you reread Where the Red Fern Grows every year, and you said that it's the saddest dog book ever written. So what is it about dogs as like a literary device that you like keep returning to as like, you know, in your own reading life, but now are using in your own writing?
Yeah. So, you know, when writing about dogs, it is very easy to cross into the line of manipulating a reader. It is absolutely very easy because for the most part, people love dogs and we don't want to see bad things happen to dogs. So when you're writing about a dog, there's a level of manipulation of feelings when you're coming into it. Where the Red Fern Grows was the very first book I ever read that made me cry. And if you've not read the Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls, you should. It is one of the epitome dog books, but unfortunately it's kind of like in the vein of Old Yeller, where it's not necessarily happiness for the dog at the very end. But I read that book every single year just to make sure I can feel something still. Like I want to make sure that
Getting
I'm not
harder
dead.
and harder, yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because every single day you turn on the news, every single day it's worse and worse and worse. And it's been like this now for a decade. And so I want to make sure that I'm not dead inside, that my soul has not turned to stone. So if I figure if I can still cry at Where the Red Fern Grows, I still have a grasp on my humanity. So that's a good thing. But dogs, I've always been an animal lover. I've always wanted to do something like this because I grew up with Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey, The Adventures of Milo and Otis, those kinds of movies. And
Shadow and Chance.
Shadow coming over, Shadow at the very end coming over the hill when the little boy
limping.
is getting sadder, right? Yeah. And the music is swelling and I know the music by heart and everything like that. And it's just, I wanted to write a book like that while still having queerness be a part of the book, because Burke's owner, as the book progresses, Burke's eventual owner is a queer man, and Burke tries to find him a boyfriend is his job, and that what he wants to do. It doesn't necessarily always work out the best for Burke. He kind of jumps in all 4 feet without thinking, but it was just delightful. I love being
I like
able
that you
to
just
write
looked
this
at your
book.
dog when you said that, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And for those not in the know, the final thing I'll say about it is the title, The Stars Look Like Home. It's the gayest thing I've ever done because it comes from a Britney Spears song.
That is amazing.
It is hers. Well, it's not even a good Britney Spears song. It's one of her C-list songs. It's called Alien. And the reason that I did that is because the book exists. One day, some years ago, my back hurt and I was laying on the ground on the hardwood floor to try to get some relief. And my dog was laying right next to me. And Britney Spears started playing on my radio, and it was that Alien song. And I looked over at my dog and I remembered that meme that goes around online that says, "What would you think your dog would say to you if you could understand each other for a minute?" And that Britney Spears song Alien came on, and there's a line in it that says, "The stars in the sky look like home, take me home." And I was like, is there a book here?
Wow.
And then there was. And then now the book is dedicated to my dog Hendrix and to Britney Spears.
That's amazing. I hope she finds it.
I hope she does too. Because
Yes.
Look, man, Britney, I came of age when Britney was first coming out. I was 17 years old when she released her very first song, and I've been a fan ever since, man. I've seen her live like 3 times. So
That's amazing.
I totally get it. If she reads it, that'll be the happiest I've ever been.
So when an author breaks through to a bigger audience, sometimes their earlier books kind of come back into the spotlight.
Yeah.
And, sometimes for the first time for a lot of readers. And I've noticed that happening with some of your work. Most notably, The Bones Beneath My Skin was originally written in 2017. Then you self-published it in 2018. And now it's republished now, like in 2025.
Yeah.
By Tor. Can you talk a little bit about why that happens in the publishing industry, and I guess what it's like for you, either emotionally or creatively, to see those older stories reaching, newer and wider audiences, like kind of later in their shelf life?
Yeah. So when I initially signed with Tor, it was for three books, three adult books, which were The House in the Cerulean Sea, Under the Whispering Door, and In the Lives of Puppets. And I also signed with Tortine for three young adult books, which became the Extraordinaries trilogy. And at that point, I decided I was kind of done with YA. I didn't need to do anymore. I was fine with what I had done in that space. And I still don't understand why. For some reason, The House in the Cerulean Sea blew up, and then Under the Whispering Door and In the Lives of Puppets came out and did really well. And so, of course, Tor was like, "You've published like 30 other books. Can we have some?" I said, "Well, okay, what are you looking for?" And so they republished the entirety of the Green Creek series, all four books in that. And then last year,
beautiful new covers.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then they did The Bones Beneath My Skin last year. And then we're doing four other ones that have not been announced yet. The one that will be announced next month that is coming out a lot sooner than people will think. And it's very cool. But the big reason, let's be honest here. The big reason, is that publishers always want to make more money. That's what it is. And if somebody is making them money, they'll think, oh, why not make more money on the back? Because he has all these other books that are there. But for me, is the money nice? Absolutely. But for me, the bigger part of it is The Bones Beneath My Skin specifically came out at a very weird time. I was with a prior publisher for the first 6 years of my career that was independently published. And then there was this period where I had signed with Tor in 2018, but nothing would come from that until 2 years later in The House in the Cerulean Sea in 2020, because that's how long traditional publishing takes. So in the meantime, I had this book called The Bones Beneath My Skin, and I was like, I'm going to give this to my independent publisher. Long story short, there's no need to dig up all the old drama, but it turned out this old publisher was embezzling money from me, from other authors, from their editors, from their cover artists. Still to this day, almost 10 years later, they still owe me 5 figures.
Oh my God.
In royalties that I'll never see. I'll never ever see.
You don't need to name the publisher, obviously, but are they still publishing?
Yep.
Wow.
Nowhere near as much as they used to. They are down to like 1 or 2 books a month now, rather than like 5 books a week.
Wow.
And it is, it's a long sort of thing. But initially that book was going to go with them, and they came back to me and said, are you sure that this is a romance? Because there's only one sex scene in it. And I kind of lost my mind, because they had just recently published a book of mine called How to Be a Normal Person about asexuality that had no sex in it. And it was obviously a romance. So I got pissed, and it was on top of the embezzling thing. So I said, screw you guys. I am taking this book back. But not only did I have to take that book back from them, I had to take every single other book that I had published with them, which was in the 20s, and republish them, self-publish them all on my own.
It sounds like a legal nightmare.
It is. And then in addition to republishing all of my old stuff, I had to publish The Bones Beneath My Skin, all while transferring all my new work to a new publisher who was going to be publishing me in a few years. So The Bones Beneath My Skin, to me, got lost in that shuffle. Rightly so. It was a mess. Everything was a mess. There was drama online about the publisher. I was trying to get all my books back up and ready for readers, and the book kind of got lost in the shuffle. So when Tor came to me and said, back catalog, what would you like to give us? I didn't even think Green Creek first. The first thing I said was The Bones Beneath My Skin, please. And they said yes, and then they did it, and it came out and became a New York Times bestseller. And I'm just the happiest
so glad
I've
it's
ever been.
Having its
Me too, man. Because I adore that book. And the fact that it got a second chance is a rarity, an absolute rarity. And I have been very fortunate to work with a publisher that yes, there's the financial aspect of it, but they really give a crap about my stories. They like my books. They wouldn't publish my books if they didn't like my books. They wouldn't take an old book and republish it, repackage it, spend money on marketing and do a new cover if they didn't like the work. So I'm very happy that they are on my team and they're giving my older stories a chance at a new life.
That's amazing. I love Tor. I feel like you're not the first author who's kind of glowed about them.
No, I know Olivia Blake, who's a big Tor author. A lot of her work beforehand was like TikTok famous, and it was self-published. And then Tor bought all her old back catalog and republished everything too.
It all came out so. I've spoken with Olivia before as well, and the same thing. She had one book come out that blew up, and then all of a sudden, all of her back catalog was coming out with brand new covers and beautiful, and like you said, getting a second life. It's awesome.
It is, and publishers don't have to. And majority of publishers would never do that. A majority of publishers would say that's in the past. We're not going to worry about. I remember. And I want to make clear here that how wonderful Tor has been. Before Tor published even my very first book, The House in the Cerulean Sea, in March of 2020, when I was going through all this crap with the other publisher, Tor came to me and said, "We'll buy every single one of your books.
Wow.
We'll buy your entire back catalog." And at that time, I was coming off from one publisher who screwed me to a traditional publisher who I didn't know about. So I said, "No, I'm good." And
makes sense to be guarded after what you were going through.
But I will say they've made similar offers since then, and I still said no. And the reason being is that there's certain books that I just want to keep for me. Certain books that I put out that were self-published. Like they wanted my very first books that I published way back in my very first book in 2011 was a family dramedy called Bear, Otter, and the Kid. And they wanted to do that. And I said, it's not a good book. So, it's a very much a first book by an author. And so
it's gotta be weird, right? As like an author who has like 20 books under their belt, I don't really want my
30,
first.
I have 35 now.
35. Wow.
Yeah.
I think if I wrote 35 books, I don't know if I'd want my very first one to be on the new releases section at every bookstore across the country. It feels a little like I've grown since then.
Well, so when they came to me the second time late last year and said, we want to republish more of your back catalog, Green Creek and Bones did really well, so we want some more. I went back to as early in my catalog as I felt comfortable doing. And so they'll be republishing at some point in the next few years. The earliest book they're going back to is my fourth novel, which is Into This River I Drown, which went on to win the Lambda Literary Award when it came out. And that's as far back as I'm allowing them to go. Because that book, it's not bad. It is me.
I hope you're not on the marketing team for this book.
Right. It's me attempting to ape Faulkner in telling a Faulkner kind of type story. And it's good, but it's very much, this is who I was as a writer versus what you see now with me as a writer. And it's very strange, especially when you have to go back and like before the book comes out to like do touch-up edits so you're reading work that I'm rereading work that I did 10, 15 years ago. And it's wild to see because I have to stop myself from changing everything. Everything.
Yeah. Wow, that's so exciting and really, really, it's really interesting. I love the like kind of peek behind the curtain on like that. And I am so gonna go down the rabbit hole on that prior publisher after this call.
Oh yeah, you absolutely should. Yeah, you should.
It sounds crazy.
I go and visit their website a couple of times a year just to see if they're still alive. And somehow they're running on fumes, but somehow they're still going and they still owe people a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you found a publisher who's not embezzling from you and seems to really love your work.
You know what? I will say this, like it took me a little bit to trust them, obviously coming from
Makes
work,
sense.
But they have probably been over backwards way too many times to assuage me, but they have more than proven themselves to be one of the best publishers of science fiction and fantasy in the world for a reason they are. And it's been great.
So we kind of touched on some of the book covers for your work, and they all have sort of a similar theme. And I know you've been asked about AI before, but I kind of wanted to ask you about it from a different angle. And one thing I've really loved about all of your books is the art. And especially that you have this long-standing collaboration with Chris Sickles, who you mentioned at Red Nose Studio. In a moment when we're seeing so much AI-generated junk kind of flooding book covers and even in some cases writing, why do you think it's so important to you, and or maybe not just to you, but to all writers and publishers to continue to support real artists versus going like a cheaper route?
Right. So look, Sometimes I see an argument when it comes to independent authors who self-publish, that they can't afford to like get a cover artist, so that's why they do AI. And obviously we can get into the whole morality and ethics of AI and the fact that it scrapes works from pre-existing works. My own have been used in training certain models of AI and stuff like that. And I get that, but at the same time, my point, I think this: writing a novel is not an easy thing to do. It is a labor of love, is a labor of creativity, and it is art, even if it's not a good book. I've read books that I just don't like at all. I've read books that I do not finish. I've read books that if I finished and rated such things, I would rate it 1 star.
Yeah.
But the fact is that a person wrote it, a person tried. And even if they're not a good writer, you'll have people who read my books that think I'm not a good writer, but at least I am actually putting in the work to be able to do that. You mentioned Chris Sickles. In case people don't know, all of my covers are 3D models that he hand builds and then photographs. For instance, the Bones Beneath My Skin cover, if you see the cover, you'll see the flashing light that is the bright spark that is in the middle. That is a literal sparkler that he took off, lit, and then took the photos of for that. What I love about Chris's work, and this kind of stretches towards covers in general, what I love about Chris's work is how tactile it is. It feels real. It feels 3D. It is not a hand-drawn anything. It feels like it has weight, like it has heft to it. When you see like the hand-drawn like cartoon covers now, that is filled, that romance is all about now, that everything is hand-drawn cartoon covers in romance rather than the headless torsos of like the 2010s.
Yeah.
Those are fine. You know, that's not my cup of tea, but those are fine because an artist actually went through and made those. But now it's getting to the point when I sell foreign rights to my books. I have to make sure with each of these publishers that they do not do AI in any way, shape, or form when they create my covers, because I don't have, you know, a lot of people think I must have so much power when it comes to publishers and stuff like that. With my own, maybe, but with foreign publishers, they're kind of their own thing once you sell them the rights. Thankfully, I've only come up against that issue once, and it was before the book was out into the world. So I was able to come down hard and say, don't ever use AI anything for my books.
Yeah, because I mean, it would look like an endorsement, right? Like, I guess TJ Klune uses AI.
Exactly. And I never, ever want to be in that position. I mean, look, man, if you are of a certain age, you probably remember AOL Instant Messenger, and you probably remember on AOL Instant Messenger, there was a AI chatbot called Smarter Child.
Yeah, I do remember this.
Yeah, and you would just talk back and forth this stupid thing. Now it's advanced even more, where literally our books, our art, our music are being scraped and fed to a machine so it can learn. That is not art. That is not creativity. That is stealing work from other people. And I see the argument, well, AI art is just as valid as real art. No, it's not. No, it's not.
I see that too, and it blows my mind.
You don't take the time or have the capacity to learn how to make art. You're cheating. You're cutting corners. If I published a book that was partially written by AI or was completely written by AI, I didn't do anything. I didn't write a book. A computer wrote a book, and people will be able to tell, regardless of what you think. You know, when you look at a piece of art posted by somebody and you can say that's obviously AI. I mean, look at it. That's not a creator. That person isn't creating anything. They are stealing from other people. And the fact that that is an argument that is okay with some to that you're stealing works of art to machine learn and to create that blows my mind. It's as if science fiction and fantasy genre hasn't been warning about this same thing for 100 years. It's
very Black Mirror.
Well, it is. And it's, it's so funny that we see movies like Terminator with Skynet and everything. And it's like, okay, now we're closer to that than we've ever been. And we're still, have the movie WALL-E at the very beginning of WALL-E, when humans are introduced in WALL-E, how they're all fat and overweight and sitting in chairs and glued
With
to their
screen,
screens.
yeah.
Exactly. We're going that direction. And some people seem to think that it's okay. Look, my thing with AI is this. AI should be used and only used to make hard jobs easier. And that way it gives those people more time to create art. That's what AI should be used for. That's it. Nothing else.
I completely agree. I'm glad that some publishers and authors are really standing up against this. I mean, both like in words, but also in lawsuits, right? Like Paul Tremblay and Emily Austin, and I forget who else is on that.
I need to say, Tor, my publisher, has been caught with some AI covers before. And like Christopher, I think, I'm not going to drag other authors because I don't know their business and everything, but there's been a couple of times when they've launched new covers by some bigger named authors and they've been AI and they've been called out for it, rightfully so.
Yeah.
And I've told my publisher that if AI even touches any of my stuff, I will go full scorched earth, man. I won't do that, which is why I'm so happy that I get to continue my partnership with the amazing Chris Sickles, who does everything by hand. And that is how I do it. So I just want to make sure that my team that I've built around me understands that is the important thing and not machine learning.
Well, thanks for fighting the good fight.
Oh, God, I'm so sick of AI and AI people, man.
Oh my God. It feels like every single time I open any piece of software or app or whatever, introducing new AI feature that you can't turn on,
Zoom right now. I just logged into Zoom and right before our call started, the screen on there says Zoom AI, do this with AI. And I'm like, no.
So I have one last question before we wrap up here, and it's about success. So we've kind of talked about how successful Cerulean Sea and the books that came after it have been, and the last time we chatted was 3 years ago, and I feel like since then it just keeps growing. Like it's one of those books that it feels like everyone I knew read it, even people who don't call themselves readers, people that they read, but they don't read fantasy. Like everyone was obsessed with this book. Like, does that level of success create pressure for you, for your next book? Like, did it change how you like approached what you were writing? Or like, I'm picturing like, that's a lot of like things to have on your shoulders when you're,
It is. I did not expect that. Obviously you hope that no matter what you do, that something you put your blood, sweat, and tears in will be successful. That's not always the case. I've had books that have come out, especially early in my career, where I told you, my very first book was a family dramedy that was not in any way fantastical. And then I did a hard pivot with my second book and did this big, stupid science fiction world that made no sense and was a terrible book, to the point where when I republished all my old novels, I did not republish that one because I did not like it at all. And I think about success like this. There is a very large subset of my readers who would be very happy if I just rewrote the same version or a different version of The House in the Cerulean Sea over and over and over and over again. There are authors who do that. There are authors who write like 20, 30 book series following the same characters. And you know what? More power to them. I can't do that. I cannot write the same type of book over and over and over again. Why? Because A, I would get bored. And if I would get bored, my readers would notice my boredom in my work. And B, I have ADHD, man. I can't focus on any one thing for a very long stretch of time. So the success to me has been it's been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, but it's also kind of a double-edged sword.
Right.
Because once you get to a certain level of success, you put my publisher has never put pressure on me. I put the pressure on myself, thinking, okay, what if this book doesn't hit a bestseller list? Or what if this book doesn't win an award? Or what if this book isn't received as well as some of my other ones? And you could become mired in that. You can become too focused on that side of things. And maybe for a time I did become too focused on that side of things. But then I realized the only thing that people should and can expect of me is for me to write the best story I know how, and for me to put a work out that I'm proud of. I'm no longer going to put out a book that I'm not 100% convinced is a good book that I wrote. I have maybe 3 or 4 full-length novels that will probably never see the light of day because they're just not very good.
Wow.
And I I want to make sure that when I put out a book that it is recognizably me, but also not derivative of what came before. And that can not be good for some readers who want that same kind of feeling that I give them in every single thing that I write. But for those who are a little bit more adventurous, they get to follow me wherever my brain takes me. And that is an insane and humbling position to be in at this moment. Right now, at this point in my career, my publisher would allow me to write any kind of book I wanted and they would put it out. So I take that level of responsibility very seriously in what I do. And so just because I've been successful, and that's great and that's wonderful, that's amazing, doesn't mean that changes who I am. As a matter of fact, I had to sit down with myself when The House in the Cerulean Sea first went on a bestseller list on the New York Times. I literally sat down with myself and said, you can't let this go to your head. You can't. Yeah. This is just a one-time thing. It could fall off the list next week and you'll never get on the list ever again. Take it as it comes. Take it one day at a time. And that's what I do. So now my mindset is if a book comes out and it doesn't do as well as a previous book, you know what? That's okay. You know why? Because I'll have a billion other stories that I get to tell. And that's so cool that I get to do that. I am very, very lucky in what I get to do. And I'm never, ever, ever going to take that for granted, because I remember publishing my very first book back in 2011 and telling myself that if even one person walked away from that book thinking a little differently, then I'll have done my job. And I remember the day after my book came out, I woke up to my very first piece of fan mail. It was from a reader in Hungary who had read my first book and wrote that to me. I still have that fan mail. Wow. I have that fan mail printed somewhere because it's a reminder that at one point in my career, it was just one person. It was just one person who had read my book. And now so many more read my books, but that one person is still just as important as they've ever been.
This is a very healthy outlook. I love it. I think I would be the one that would be like up late at night, mired in it, reading reviews. So I think your approach is much better.
No, don't do that. Never, ever do that.
Don't go to Goodreads.
Right. Because my whole thing with this, if there's an author listening there and you're newer, there's going to be a very strong urge in you to go and read every single review of who you are as an author, even the terrible reviews. So think of it like this. Think of your favorite book in the entire world, your favorite book that you've ever read, the one that you point to and say, this is the pinnacle of literary fiction to me. And then go look at the 1-star reviews on Goodreads and see what other people think of it. That's how it is to be a writer. You don't need to worry about stuff like this. Worry about the people who find joy in your books. Don't worry about the people that hate your books, because you're not going to change their minds ever. There are so many books out there for everyone. Just because a person didn't like one book doesn't mean they're not going to find another book that they like. And it doesn't mean you won't find a reader who will come to your books and become obsessed. That's just how it is. You can't plan on anything. And when good things happen, take them for what they are and don't let them go to your head.
You just mentioned joy, and I know we're up against time, so this is my last question, but I always like to end on a joyful moment here. Yeah. And I ask authors for one good thing, either big or small. It doesn't have to be, a book. It just any kind of recommendation for something that's bringing you joy right now.
So I'm a lot. If you followed me at any point, you know that I have a desperate love affair with Florence and the Machine. Florence and the Machine is my favorite artist in the world. She is a gorgeous singer, and she just put out a new album late last year that is kind of like a folk horror kind of album. And I have listened to it on repeat since it came out. I already have my tickets to see her live when she comes here. I've seen her live 4 times.
Britney Spears.
Yeah, she is. And the reason A, I love her so much is because I love her music, but also B, one day, she will do a song for an adaptation of mine. That is like my vision board. I love it. My middle-aged white women vision board that I have up. That is Florence Welch coming to me and going, yes, Travis, I would love to do a song for one of your books. I'd be like, thank you, Florence from Florence and the Machine.
It will happen.
It'll happen. So if you have not listen to Florence and the Machine. Her new album just came out in October. She's British, and I was on tour in the UK when the album came out. And so I got to be surrounded by British people who did not care about Florence and the Machine as much as I did.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's
awesome. I haven't heard that yet, so I'll give it a listen as soon as we
it's
wrap up.
Good. It's so good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Craig. And I hope that it's not another 3 years before I get to come back and do this again. So
no way.
Let's do it again.
We didn't even get to talk about your book that's coming out in April, so we'll have to talk again soon.
Yes, we will. Absolutely. It's called We Burn So Bright, and it is the reason that the dog book, The Stars Look Like Home, is coming out so soon after is this because the dog book is my apology for what I'm about to do, and We Burn So Bright. And I'm so excited for it.
Awesome. I can't wait to read it. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you so much, Craig. I appreciate it.